Hello, my friends. Good morning. Today is Thursday, already the last day of the week. You have done a great job keeping up, I hope, this week. Some of you, I just want to give you a pat on the back, guys. There's going to be a surprise for those who have completed everything. There's some of you, when I look through your classroom, I see you have everything turned in. You've been working so hard. And I think there's probably going to be an announcement soon for you who've been working really hard. Um, and have everything turned in, something to look forward to. Okay. So, as we get started this morning, I do want to thank those who have been diligently working. Okay. This morning's talk is called Just Another Snowflake in the Crowd. Snowflakes. They're beautiful, aren't they? We didn't get to see them this year, but last year and the year before, I bet you probably saw a snowflake when it snowed in Savannah. So beautiful, so soft, and so icy cold. Did you know one snowflake is a tiny, delicate thing, easily melted just by the touch of your finger? But a bunch of them together, and they can blanket the world in shimmering white, or they can come crashing down a mountain in what we call an avalanche, and they can destroy everything in their path. A snowflake forms high up in the clouds. Remember when we studied water? A tiny water droplet freezes into an ice crystal. Water vapors in the cloud attach to the frozen crystal and stretch the snowflake into amazingly complex and creative shapes. Though the basic shape of a snowflake is almost always a six-sided figure, that's a what? Hexagon. Each snowflake becomes its own unique creation. That means it's hard to, if it's unique, that means it has things just about that one that's different. Though it's hard to tell whether they're jumbled together in a big pile or they're stuck together in a snowman, no two snowflakes are exactly the same. Do you know they were created uniquely? That's pretty neat. Do you ever feel like you're just another person in the crowd, that there's nothing special about you? If you've ever thought that, you're wrong. You know, people have certain things in common, just like snowflakes mostly are the shape of a hexagon. But there's other things that are just about you. Do you know that you were made uniquely? You're never like exactly another person in the crowd, just like a snowflake. We see you, we see that the characteristics that you have that are different from even people in your own family. And we want you to know that you are special, okay? Um, be looking for a message from our staff as well soon that shows that you are special. We see you and we know you're working hard, and I want to thank you for that this morning, okay? As we get started, today is Thursday. We've already gotten all the Riggs words for the week. So if you have a piece of paper handy, please get out your paper and pencil. Miss Gillard's going to give you all 18 words today, just like we were in class. Now, we try to keep these things going so you can practice at home, and that when you get to third grade next year, you'll be right ready to go. So Miss Gillard's continued these spelling, even though they're just kind of practice spelling tests. By now, you should have completed the Riggs document where you put in Monday's words, 6 words. You wrote 3 sentences. Tuesday's words, you wrote 3 sentences. And Wednesday's words, and you wrote 3 sentences. So I'll be looking today to see who has turned those in. Make sure, if you want to get credit, that you mash the turn in button on those, okay? All right, so now you've had time to get your paper. I'm going to call out the 18 words, and then I'm going to call out the sentences for you to practice. This is for you to keep going with your dictation, and you be ready. So when you start next year, you'll be ready to write good sentences, and you will have the proper punctuation and letter formation and capitalization. Okay. All right. Number 1, the word today is scrub. Scrub. Number 2, duty. Duty. It is my duty to vote. Duty. Number 3, auto. Singular. Auto. Number 4, plural. Autos. Autos. Number 5, automobile. Automobile. And number 6, hungry. Hungry. Number 7, subtract. Subtract. Excuse me. Number 8, subway. Subway. Number 9, submerge. Submerge. Number 10, submarine. Submarine. Number 11, western. Western. Number 12, tailor. Tailor. A tailor is a person that what? Makes clothes. Number 13, half. Half. Number 14, the plural form, halves. Halves. Number 15, self. Just one, singular, self. Self. Number 15, themselves. Themselves is more than one. Themselves. Number 17, plunge. Plunge, to go down. Or you can take a plunge, which is a noun. Plunge. And number 18, internet. Internet. Now, what do we do after we've written all 18 words? We check our spelling. Go back and look at your list. Were there any words today that you needed to capitalize? No. Okay. Were there any I's you needed to dot or T's crossed or any letters that look similar to another? Always check your work very carefully every time you write words. Now, I would love for you to either check your words later after the video or have somebody check them to see how many out of the 18 you got. Okay. So just to see what you would have made. Now let's practice the 2 sentences of dictation. Okay. Tell us again, what are the types of sentences? Okay. A statement. What type of sentence do we call a statement where you say, I am 7 years old? That's a statement. Okay, we call that a declarative sentence. A declarative sentence ends in a period. Very good. Okay, another kind of sentence would be a what? A question. Okay, a question sentence has a name as well. Do you remember the name of a question sentence? Kind of a big word. Interrogative, and it ends in a question mark. Okay, these are the 2 types of sentences we'll have on dictation today. What are the other types of sentences? Okay, what type of sentence shows strong or sudden feeling? Either you would say it very loud or you would say it with strong feeling. Exclamatory. It ends in a exclamation point. And the last type of sentence that we learned was a command. That kind of sentence would also end in a period usually, and it would be something like turn out the light, brush your teeth, don't forget your book bag. Those are commands. Okay, commands tell you to do something. We call those imperative. The 2 types of sentences today I'll give you are these. One ends in a period and one ends in a question mark. Are you ready to begin? Practice writing your sentences, okay? All right, number 1. The bears helped themselves to my meal. The bears helped themselves to my meal. The bears helped themselves to my meal. One more time, check every word. The bears helped themselves to my meal. What kind of sentence was that, number one? It was a statement sentence, a declarative. What did it end with? A period. Very good. Make sure that you put a period at the end. And what should you do to the beginning? Capitalize the T. One more time. The bears helped themselves to my meal. Number two, if you need to press pause on the video, you're not ready, please do so. Number two, may I have half of your plate? Because I am hungry. May I have half of your plate? Because I am hungry. May I have half of your plate? Because I am hungry. May I have half of your plate? Because I am hungry. Now, what kind of sentence would that be? Starts with the word may. That's a question sentence, okay? We call that a question sentence or an interrogative sentence. What does it end with? A question mark, okay? May I have half of your plate because I am hungry? Question mark. So now you have two sentences. If you need to pause and catch up, please do so. Okay, thank you for completing your rigs for the week. You have tomorrow, you don't have any new words. Tomorrow is the day to catch up on all your work and to join us with our Zoom lesson, okay? All right, if you have your first star today, very good. First star. For our stars today, I thought we would get something out of the mystery bag. It'll be something maybe for a girl and something for a boy. The first one is Hello Kitty. You get your first star today. Very good. Okay. The next thing I'd like to do is to review your math this week. If you've looked at the Google Classroom, you've seen there is a worksheet there on angles and sides, okay? If you'll pull that up, you'll need to complete that by today, no later than tomorrow, okay? We're going to talk about that today as we go over our math. So you don't need to print anything out today, okay? All right, so we're going to look at some of these shapes that we have talked about. This should be something that we have reviewed, okay? And number one talks about the shapes, sides, and angles, okay? So let's talk about them as we go over this, okay? This is what shape? This is called a triangle. Triangle has how many sides? 3. Very good. What's a shape with that has straight sides all the way around? What's that called? That's also called a polygon. Very good. A polygon can have several sides. It can't have 2. Has to have 3 or more. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and up. A polygon has straight sides. So as you take the quiz this week, you were looking at this one. Okay, so this is a triangle, and you had to list the number of sides and the number of angles. Okay, so how would you find the number of sides? You would count 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you put 3. And the number of angles. Where are the angles? Okay, 1, here's 1, 2, and 3. We often call these vertices. So it would be 3, 3. So when you fill in your answer document for 1A, you would look for the answers that said 3, 3. Okay? All right, is everybody with me there? All right, let's keep going. So the next shape is not a triangle. Okay, the next shape looks like this for B. Do you remember all the ways we can describe this shape? Ms. Gaylord has shown you many. Okay, what would we call this shape? Okay, it is a polygon. It has straight sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. What do we call a polygon with 4 sides? A quadrilateral. Very good. Okay. All right. So is this quadrilateral a square? No. Okay. Is it a rectangle? No. What shape did we say this was called? A rhombus. Very good. Okay. So all you need to do is count the sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so we would put 4 here. And count the angles. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you choose your answer for B, you're going to look for the answer that says 4, 4. Okay, you with me? All right, so that's how you complete that part of the quiz. Let's keep looking at that. The next shape then is a different shape that we haven't looked at, okay? It looks something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you remember what we call a 5-sided shape? Pentagon. Very good. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing that Ms. Gaylord just taught you. When you look at the angles, you're going to be looking here, 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 and here. Okay, and you actually can look right there as well. Okay, so that's going to have 5 as well. The next shape is a different shape. Okay, it looks like let's see if we can remember this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What is the name of an 8-sided figure? Okay, it is a polygon. We can call that a polygon because it has straight sides. What does the prefix 8 mean? Okay, think of OCT, oct. October is our 8th month. Okay, oct meaning 8. An octopus has how many legs? Okay, very good. So an octagon is the name of this shape. You might say it looks like a what? A stop sign, right? Looks like a stop sign you would see in red. Okay, so how many sides does this have? It has 8. So look, when you count the angles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Are you noticing a pattern with the number of sides and the number of angles? They are the same. Very good. They are the same. Okay. So then you do the same thing for E, F, G, H, and I. Okay. So be careful when you find the answers, though, because you need to make sure that the angles you look at are on both sides. Let me just show you with number I, okay? Now, if you count the sides, if you look at shape number I, you would have to count the sides to be able to get the answer, okay? It's funny because some of them look like an arrow, some of them look like a lightning bolt. And the one we chose for I looks something like this. Almost looks like a piece of a bow tie pasta or something almost. Okay, so let's look at this one. So we're looking for the number of sides and the number of angles. Okay, so let's count the sides first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so this one has how many? 6 sides. Now let's look at these angles together. Okay, I can tell this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. Okay, but that's not the correct answer. Where are my other 2 angles? Here and here. Very good. So it would be 6 sides and 6 angles there. Very nice. Okay. Now, as you complete page 1, you slip down to page 2. It says, study the shapes below and then answer the questions. Okay. A, they ask you, which shape has the most angles? So you're going to want to count the angles on all the shapes. Which shape has 4 more angles than shape F? Okay, we're going to look at shape F. Shape F looks like a L turned to the side. We need to find how many angles shape F has. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If shape F has 6 angles, which one has 4 more? What's your key word in that word problem? More means to add. So you're looking for a shape with how many angles? 10. Very good. Can you find one of those shapes with 10 angles? You have to look carefully at that one. When you get to number C, what shape has 5 fewer sides than shape D? Okay, so I would look at shape D and count the number of sides first. Okay, let's look at shape D. Shape D has a lot of sides. It's got 1 across the top, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, then it's hard to see on mine, but it looks like it has 10. Let me count them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, 10. Okay, so D has 10. What shape has 5 fewer sides than D? D has 10. What's your key word in number C? Fewer. What does fewer mean? Subtract. What shape has 5 fewer sides than D? We need to find the answer to 10 minus 5, which is what? 5. Good. So I'm looking for a shape that has 5 sides. Let me look if I can find it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, I see it. So you check when you answer the quiz what that is, okay? And then it says in number D, how many more angles does shape A have than B? Let's see. Well, we have to look at shape A. Looks like an X. Okay, so this is, we need to make sure we count the angles. Okay, so it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So shape A has 12. How many more? We're going to write down 12. Does shape A have than B? Shape B looks like this. Okay, this is shape A. This is shape B. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many more does shape A have than B? What is the key word there? More means to do what? Subtract. So think of that as your answer, okay? And then number E, which of these shapes have the same number of sides as angles? Okay, think about that. If you've been counting the shapes, the sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's always matched the number of angles. So all of them, right, would have the same. Look at the word problem on the bottom, number 3, okay? It says, Joseph's teacher said to make shapes with 6 sides and 6 angles on his geoboard. Shade the shapes that share these attributes. Okay, in other words, which shapes are, these aren't the same ones, but which ones are 6-sided? And circle the shape that does not belong. Tell me why it doesn't belong. Okay, so I'm going to take my geoboard and try to show you what they mean by this one, okay? All right, so let's look at the bottom shape, across the bottom. Okay, it goes across the bottom. This may not work on mine. 1, 2, and then it goes up and down. Then it goes across and down. Let's see if that's what it looks like, okay? Something like that. My geoboard's not the same as his, but looks like it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, look at the shape at the bottom. Does that fit what Joseph's teacher said to do? Does this one have 6 sides? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. Does it have 6 angles? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, it does belong. Check the other 2 shapes on the geoboard to see if they belong, okay? And tell me which one does not belong. Okay, I see one shape that has 6. And one of those shapes has 7 sides. So your job when you do the quiz is to pick the one that does not fit. Okay, so I hope that helps you explain what to do on that quiz. That one's going to be for a grade, so take your time, okay? It's in your Google Classroom. That was the math assignment for today, is to really look at that piece of the worksheet and follow the answer. So when Ms. Gaylor puts material, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to press to turn in. When she puts material, when she has a Google form, you have to press turn in. So if you looked back at the classroom today, you notice that it says material, identify sides and angle worksheet. And then it says, let's see if I can find it. Then it says, yes, math material, you don't have to do anything for. But when it says, yes, math answer sheet for identifying sides and angles, I see that 2 of you have turned it in already. Okay. Thank you, Jamar. Thank you, Brendan. Very good. Okay. Yes, very nice. All right. So today, as you finish up the math, review those things and make sure that you've done the homework for each night, okay? You have to do Monday's homework, April 20th, press turn in. Tuesday's homework, April 21st, press turn in. Wednesday's homework, April 22nd, and today's homework, April 23rd. And make sure you press the turn in button, okay? Very good. All right. You have done a great job with that, and you get to choose something from my bag. See if I can find something for my guys this time. Let's see what this is. Looks like one of those characters you can play with a video game. Very good. All right. So you have 2 stars. Very good. We're going to jump into our reading. If you need to press pause on the video, take a stretch, run around just a minute, come back to us, go to the restroom, get a sip of water, you can do that, and we'll wait for you to get back, okay? Very good. Today's reading lesson is the last lesson of the week. It's called your independent practice. If you've printed out the documents, pat yourself on the back. That means you know exactly what we're doing, and you can read along with me. We've still been talking about comparing and contrasting stories. Did you like some of the stories this week we used? We used some folk tales. We used some fables. And today we'll use just a short story that you've heard one of them, maybe not the second one. If you look on your book, it says fantasy. Do you know what they mean by the word fantasy? Is it fiction or nonfiction? It's fiction. Okay, fiction means made up. Didn't really happen, but it's a fiction story, right? Now, if you look at the title of these stories, I want you to look at the first title, The Ugly Truckling. Based on that title, what does that sound like that you've heard before? The Ugly Truckling. Okay, it sounds like the short story maybe you've heard called The Ugly Duckling, which we'll be reading second. Very good. Okay, what clue before we even read the stories do you know that makes you think these stories may be similar? Something in them may be alike. The titles, very good. Okay, the titles. One is called The Ugly Truckling, The Ugly Duckling. Very similar and sounding alike, okay? Now, today you're going to learn all that we've learned about setting, where the story takes place, characters, and what's the word that tells you what happens in the story? The plot. Very good. Okay. So we're going to compare and contrast these before we answer the questions. All right. So if you have not read the stories that Miss Gaylor gave you in the material, I want you to pause and do that right now. Okay. The Ugly Truckling by David Gordon. Way out west, a mother truck admired her new trucklings. She smiled at their big round wheels and their strong flat beds. Now, if you have never heard the word truckling, Miss Gaylord is like that as well. If you had no idea what this story was going to talk about, from that first paragraph, can you kind of understand maybe what a truckling is? A truckling. Now, you know the root word of that, the word that we form that word from is the word what? Truck. You know what a truck is, okay? A truck is an automobile. One of our words off our list today, a truck. So if you've heard the word duckling, do you already know what a duckling is? What's the root word of the word duckling? Duck. And a duckling is a what? A baby duck. So if this is a made-up word, truckling, can you decide what the word truckling is if you know what the word duckling is? A baby what? Truck. Okay. So let's start again. Way out west, a mother truck admired Okay, she liked to look at her new trucklings. She smiled at their big round wheels and their strong flat beds. But one of the trucklings was not like her brothers and sisters. The truckling's wheels were small and narrow. She did not have a strong flat bed. To make matters worse, two strange beams stuck out the front sides of her body. The next morning, the little trucklings followed their mother, carrying rocks and bricks and wood in their little truck beds. Now, I don't have a truck here to show you, but my little, let's see, I don't even know if I can make a truck, but I'll try. But you know how when you have a truck, sometimes there's a cab to a truck. You might have a back seat or a front seat. Let's say this one has a back seat. And then after that, there's what they call the truck bed, okay, that you can put stuff in, okay? That's the bed of the truck. They carried rocks and bricks and wood in their little truck beds. But the ugly truckling could barely haul, which means to carry, a small bale of hay or pull a log. All the other little trucklings laughed at her. "Why do you have 3 wheels instead of 4?" asked one of her brothers. "You'll never be a good truck," said another brother. The ugly truckling was very sad. She was afraid that he was right. So late one night, when the sky was black and starless, the ugly truckling sped away. The next morning, she met a tractor. "Good morning," said the ugly truckling. "What are you?" "I'm a tractor," said the tractor. "Am I a tractor too?" "You're no tractor. Tractors don't have propellers on their noses." "Oh," sighed the ugly truckling, and she sped away. The ugly truckling looked at her reflection in the pond. Suddenly, she heard a loud roar overhead and looked up. She wasn't an ugly truckling after all. She was a beautiful airplane. And so she flew away with the other airplanes into a sky full of stars. Okay. Now, look at that story. I want to ask you some questions. If you had to say, what is the ugly truckling story mostly about? What would you say? The ugly truckling was teased by who? Her brothers and sisters, okay? In the story, what does the ugly truckling discover? But she's not a truck at all, right? She discovers that she is what? An airplane. Did you get a clue from the beginning of the story that helped you realize that maybe the truckling was not a truck at all? I sure did. I want you to go back to the story and I want you to find that clue. If you have your pages printed out, you can underline. If not, you can just look at it and listen. What is the clue that told us that she did not look like her brothers and sisters? Do you see what paragraph it is in? Paragraph 2. It says, one of the trucklings was not like her brothers and sisters. The truckling's wheels were small and narrow. She did not have a strong flat bed. And to make matters worse, 2 beams stuck out of her sides of her body. Okay, so if the author is telling us that that little truckling doesn't look like the others, the rest of the trucklings look like a truck, and this one has 2 beams coming out the sides of her body, and it says that the wheels are not big like a truck. They're small and narrow, okay? And then in the last section, it says, what does the tractor give as a clue to the truck? That she has a propeller on her nose, okay? And she is not like her brothers and sisters at all. Now, based on that story, we're going to have to look at the next story before we can compare the two together. If you have not read the second story called The Ugly Duckling, I want you to pause and I want you to read that for me now, okay? Now, this story was written by a famous author that lived years ago. His name was Hans Christian Andersen, but he made the original story, but it was retold by a lady named Nicole Flowers. Sometimes, excuse me, sometimes stories, as they are used over and over again, are adapted, what we call adapted or changed a little bit. And so the original story, the first time it was written, was by this man, Mr. Andersen, Hans Christian Andersen, and this one was retold, okay, for the reading book to match what we're going to look at today, okay? Our story today is The Ugly Duckling. Once upon a time, there was a baby duckling who looked nothing like his brothers and sisters. Does that sound familiar? His feet looked like big paddles. His feathers were gray, like old dishwater. Have you ever seen mama or grandma or somebody wash the dishes in dishwater that's dirty? Okay, that's what his feathers look like. The other ducklings at the pond laughed at him. They said that his quack sounded like a broken horn. So one day, the ugly duckling left the pond to find a new home. Does that sound familiar? Yes. Soon the weather grew cold. Each time the duckling saw a bird, he asked, "Am I one of you?" But the birds told him he did not look anything like them. The winter was long, but the spring finally came. One day, the duckling saw a group of beautiful birds. Their feathers were snow white, and their necks were long and graceful. "I know I can't be one of them," the duckling sighed. But one of the birds swooped down to where the duckling sat. "You are a swan, like me," the bird said. "Come with us." The duckling walked over to a puddle of water, and that is when he saw that his ugly gray feathers were now gone. He was snow white like the other birds, and his neck was long and graceful. And so the duckling, really a swan, stretched out his great wings. He flew into the sky with his new friends. Okay, very good. Now, if you look at those two stories, there are many things that are similar, okay? In our Venn diagram, let's look at the parts that are similar and different. Now, both of these stories really have a theme. Do you remember when we talked about the word theme? Okay. The theme of the story, okay, is really the lesson, basically, that it's learned, okay? We also can look at the theme after we get all of these things together in the Venn diagram, okay? So if we look at both of those stories, in this story, can you underline something that tells me how the duckling is different from his brothers and sisters, excuse me. Okay. Where does it tell it is different. Again, paragraph 1. Once upon a time, there was a baby duckling who looked nothing like his brothers and sisters. His feet looked like big what? Paddles. What kind of figurative language is that when we use the word like or as and we compare two things? Do you remember using the word like or as? We talked about this the other day. That's a simile. It compares the duck's feet to what? It says big paddles. It uses the word like, and it's a simile. His feathers were gray like old dishwater. Again, that's a simile that uses like. Compares the color of his feathers to old dirty dishwater. Okay? The other ducklings at the pond laughed at him. Okay, so that sounds familiar as well. They said his quack sounded like a broken horn. Quack, 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 quack. So one day he decided to leave. So is that something we could put on our both column, our compare? It sure is. Okay, so both animals decide, both characters, not animals. The truckling is not an animal, I'm sorry. Both characters decide to leave. Okay, they leave because both of them do not feel what? Like they're welcome with their brothers and sisters. Okay, so we have the duckling here. We'll put the duckling on one side. We'll put the truckling on the other side. And let's look again in our column that we should put our compare parts, okay? All right, so both of them have the characters, and they both have brothers and sisters that tease them, okay? They both are very, what? Different than their brothers and sisters. It shows them both of them are different. They do not have the same qualities or look like their brothers and sisters. They both find someone to ask, am I? Truckling says, am I a tractor? And the duckling says, am I one of you? He says to the bird, right? They both say the same thing, okay? They both find out in the end that they are different, right? The truckling is actually what? An airplane. The duckling is actually a beautiful swan. Those would be in the contrast parts, okay? All right, so this one was a baby duck, he thought, and this one was a baby truck, he thought. Neither one of them actually were what they thought they were, right? Do we have any other contrasting thoughts? Anything that is different between the characters of the story? If you had to think, if I ask you to describe how the ugly truckling and the ugly duckling react when they realize they're not like their brothers and sisters, what would you say? They both leave their families, right? They both end up finding a new what? Home. They both end up finding a new home in the story. Now, in the ugly duckling, every time the duckling sees another type of bird, he says, am I one of you? Am I one of you? What do we call that when we say something several times in a story? It happens in our Charlotte's Web very often. Okay, what do we call that when we say something again and again and again for the reader to understand it well? We call that repetition, right? What does repetition of the question, am I one of you? Am I one of you? Am I one of you? Tell you about the duckling? What does that tell you about the duckling? It says in the story, he searches all winter. The search, do you think it was easy for him? No, I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure. And during that time that he searches, what has he grown into? A beautiful swan. Very good. Okay. Now that you understand both stories, okay, can you tell what the theme of this story is? Kind of goes along with the theme of this morning's reading I gave you. Each one of us is what? Different. We're all unique. The theme is that each one of us can be different, and that is what? Okay. That is okay. So the theme there is to celebrate your differences. If you're following along in your book with me, we're on page 379. If you have printed out your documents, I love that you are answering. Some of you have uploaded them to me. That's great. But this time, what I'm going to grade is the Google form that you now can complete after today, now that you've read all 4 stories, okay? All 4 days of work. So make sure you complete that Google form for the grade. This question has 2 parts. Both the ugly truckling and the ugly duckling leave their families. How are their reasons for leaving alike? Let's look at the 4 choices. A, both find it hard to do their work at home. Yes or no? No. Both are laughed at by those close to them. Maybe. Hold that. C, both want to escape the cold winter weather. Well, one of them said it was cold, not the other. And both want to make new friends. Didn't really say that. What was the best choice there? They really both are trying to find out what they are, not making friends, but they both had something in common. Both of them were laughed at. So I would choose B there. Now, part B goes along with that laughed at. What 2 sentences from the passages show how the truckling and duckling are alike? You need to choose how many answers? 2. The truckling's wheels were small and narrow. Okay, would that be how they're alike? No, I would put that under truckling. The truckling has wheels. The duckling does not. So that would be a no. All the other trucklings laughed at her. Would that be similar? Laughed at? Yes, so I would circle B. The duckling walked over to a puddle of water. Is that something happened in both stories? No, because only the duckling can walk, not the truckling. D, the other ducklings at the pond laughed at him. Yes, again, they both got laughed at. He was snow white like the other birds. Nope, that would only apply to the duckling. So the 2 points that they would make that are alike are B and D. They both were laughed at. Number 2, how is the ugly duckling different from the ugly truckling? Okay, and he's something on the different column. A, he's happy with his family. Was he happy? No. B, he asked many questions. Well, they both asked questions. I'm looking for something that's different. C, he likes the way he looks. Is that true? No, because neither of them liked the way they look. And D, his looks begin to change. Okay, did the truckling change at all? No, he still had the propellers and the wings. Did the duckling change at all? Yes. So that is a reason why they're different. One changed, the duckling, but the truckling stayed the same. Those are differences, okay? So I would choose D. Turn over to 380. Let's read this part. The winter was long, but finally spring came. One day the duckling saw a group of beautiful birds. Their feathers were snow white, and their necks were long and graceful. What does the word graceful mean? If you do not know a word, what do we say you can do if you don't look it up in a dictionary? What is the thing you can do to find the meaning of the word? You can look at the words around it and you can use the context to find the meaning. We're looking for the word graceful. Their feathers were snow white and their necks were long and graceful. A neck that's long and graceful. Is it gray, the color? Is it crooked, beautiful, or strong? It tells us in the first sentence, one day the duckling saw a group of beautiful birds. Sometimes the meaning of the word is right around the word. Graceful in this sentence means beautiful. Very good. Beautiful. Now, I told you that there was a theme or a lesson learned in these stories. If you had to tell me what's the lesson learned or the theme there in both The Ugly Duckling and The Ugly Truckling, can you tell me? Both of them, plan your response. You might want to write it out like this on a web. Another way that we also plan our response, guys, is making another kind of web. Okay, and we get our ideas together before we write it. What is the lesson learned in this story? I can make a web before I get organize my thoughts. Okay, they both have characters that look what? Different. They look different. What's the word we learned today that means I look different than somebody else? I am unique. You could use that word in your answer, unique. Make a list of the ways they are similar and different. That's where you use your web that you made. Write these in your complete sentences. Both stories have a character that seems different and unique from other characters in the story. They both have the story. Do they have a good ending or a bad ending? They both have a good ending. Why? Because the character in the story realizes they are different and that's okay. Think about that as you use your webs and you use your diagrams to help you write your answer. Okay, there's a place for you to plan your response. There's a place for you to write your response. What do you need when you write your response? You need a topic sentence to your paragraph. What would a good topic sentence be? Both stories teach a good lesson. The lesson is things sometimes are different, right? And that everybody is unique. Sometimes, you know what? You don't have to work so hard to fit in. You can just be who you are, and we can celebrate that. You'll learn as you get older, it's easier. When you're younger, it's harder just to be who you are. But as you get older, you understand more that you are who you are. And you know what? You were made to be that way, and you can celebrate that. Finish your writing response, and then at the learning target, you can look and see it says, how does reading two versions of a story help you see how writers can tell the same story in different ways? All these stories we read this week were two different versions of basically the same story. I can also look at how they are alike and how they are different, right? And I can look at what took place in the story. I can look at the plot, what happens, and I can think about, you can mention this, the lesson learned. Each of these stories, whether it was a folk tale, a fable, or a short story like today, they all had a lesson learned. Do you remember some of the lessons we learned this week? I hope so. Okay, you did a great job on your reading lesson. You get another star, and let's see what I can find in the bag. We had one for the girls and one for the boys. Let's see what else I've got down here at the bottom of the bag. Do you know this is one of my favorite pins? Who is that? It's got Winnie the Pooh on there. I like Winnie the Pooh. Okay, that was your next thing. If you need to press pause and take a quick break, do that. Today, we're going to move on into science. Have you been working on your research paper on your desert or plant animal? What is the word that we've been learning? And we just talked about it. We really could have applied that to our reading lesson as well. What is the word of something that a plant or animal has that helps it survive in an environment? We call that an adaptation. Very good. Okay, today and next week, we're going to talk about some adaptations and spiders in particular, since we're wrapping up our Charlotte's Web unit. But we're going to talk about that today. I don't know if you chose a plant or an animal. I would imagine most of you probably chose an animal. So I chose some animals today to bring to you to try to find some of these adaptations, okay? Let's start with the giraffe. What's the adaptation or the way the animal survives? It could be, guys, it could be a body part. It could be a behavior. Let me talk about some behaviors first, okay? A behavior would be, this is a plant somebody gave to me. It's alive, and it's been sitting here for you to see. It's so pretty. And do you know that an adaptation of this plant, see that beautiful flower up top? Which way does it grow? It grows toward the sun. Now, Miss Gaylord has this in the corner of her, this is my kitchen dining area right here, but it's leaning. You see how it's leaning? Okay. It's trying to get toward the sun. The window is actually there, and it's leaning toward the sun. That's an adaptation of this plant. The flower is not in the roots. It's on the top, and it's leaning toward the sun. You might not have thought that was an adaptation. What might, if you chose a plant, what might be another adaptation of this plant? Okay, it also has roots in the bottom that grow downward, okay, that attach to soil. That's another adaptation. Okay, another thing is to look at animals. Now, I'd ask you about the giraffe. What's the adaptation of the giraffe? It has a long neck to reach for the leaves that are in the trees. It also has long legs to help it stand good and tall. What's an adaptation of this elephant? The elephant is too big to get water by itself, so it has that long trunk to be able to scoop up the water and bring it to its mouth, right? That long trunk, it laps it up, scoops it to its mouth, laps it up. Okay, it also has these big ears that helps it to be, it has a purpose for those ears to be able to hear really well. Okay, what's an adaptation of, let's go with this frog. Now, the frog is a different kind of animal because it changes. Remember the life cycle of the frog, how it starts out there as a little tadpole and it changes. It needs those to be living in water as a tadpole. It needs those gills and things, and it needs that tail to swim around in the water. But as it gets bigger and it loses those, it needs those legs to be able to jump from place to place. That's its adaptation. Okay. What's an adaptation of this rabbit? Okay, it has those long ears to be able to hear with. Well, and it also has the ability to move very fast and strong legs to be able to hop away. Okay. What's an adaptation of this skunk? Okay, you might say several. Okay, it blends into the surroundings. What's that called when an animal or plant blends in? Camouflage. It also has an adaptation when enemies get near. or bother it, it can do what? It can spray that smell that can attach to animals and people, and it's hard to get off that smell off you. But it's his warning to get away. That's what his adaptation, so he can escape when he lets that loose, right? Okay, let's talk about a couple others. What would be an adaptation of this insect? How many legs does this insect have? 6. Good. Okay, so an insect like this has those legs to be able to be close to the ground, right? To be able to crawl up things, across things, down things, right? It has eyes there to see. It has those antennas to be able to, sometimes the antennas are like their feelers and they can sense things and smell things with those. And it helps them to survive and be able to find food. Okay. Those are just some things to think about when you think about animals. Do you know the adaptation of this animal, the owl? Okay. The owl likes to have their eyesight. They like the dark better. So they're able to, the bright light sometimes hurts their eyes. So they have their pupils can get smaller and bigger. Did you know that some of the owls can completely turn their necks around? Okay. That would be to be able to look and find things all the way around. The owl has those claws on the bottom so it can hang on to the tree branches that it's in. The owl has those wings that help it to fly and the feathers that keep it warm. Okay. It also could have those hollow bones that helps it to be light and it goes through the air. There are just so many adaptations we could talk about as you are studying in science. Okay. So, and one more as we finish is this behavior. What's a behavioral adaptation of this bear? This bear goes into hiding. Basically, in the winter, it's called what? Hibernation. And with the hibernation, it's able to store up fat, right? And it's able to sleep through the winter. And so it avoids those coldest times of the year. Okay, those are some adaptations. This is the last day. Now, tomorrow your research is due. Don't forget to press turn in. I hope that you've either written it on a Google document or you've maybe written something and taken a picture of it and uploaded it. But don't forget to do that. That's a major grade that you need to do. Okay. All right, so you finished science for today and you get to choose the next thing. Let's see, how about this? Do you like a little motorcycle for the boys? Girls, how about a little squirt of perfume? Okay, very good. Let's wrap up with our book study on Charlotte's Web. I hope that you have followed along and are enjoying this book. Now, you should have taken the quiz. Chapters 12 through, it's 10 through 12, I believe. We have read them all. You now don't wait to the end. Take it after you read it because if you don't, you'll forget it, okay? Yesterday, we read chapter 13 where Charlotte has found a new word. What is it? Radiant. She started with some pig. She went to terrific. And now, who's found her the new word? Templeton. Good job. And Templeton has found it in the barn, actually on a soapbox. And so now she's found the new word and Charlotte is ready to work and Wilbur is ready to sleep. Chapter 14, Dr. Dorian. The next day was Saturday. Fern stood at the kitchen sink, drying the breakfast dishes as her mother washed them. Mrs. Arable worked silently. She hoped Fern would go out and play with some other children instead of heading for the Zuckerman's barn to sit and just watch animals. Charlotte is the best storyteller I ever heard, said Fern, poking her dish towel. Fern, her mother said sternly, you must not invent things. You know that spiders don't tell stories. Spiders cannot talk, said her mother. Charlotte can, replied Fern. She doesn't talk very loud, but she talks. Well, what kind of story did she tell? Asked Mrs. Arable. Well, began Fern, she told about a cousin of hers who caught a fish in her web. Don't you think that's fascinating? Fern, dear, how would you get a fish into a spider's web? Said Mrs. Arable. You know that it could not happen. You're making it up. Oh, it happened all right, replied Fern. Charlotte never fibs. What do you think Fern meant there by the word fibs? Tells a lie. The cousin of hers built a web, said Fern, across a stream. One day she was hanging around on the web, and a tiny fish leaped into the air and got tangled in her web. The fish was caught by one fin, Mother. Its tail was wildly thrashing and shining in the sun. Can't you just see the web sagging dangerously under the weight of the fish? But Charlotte's cousin kept slipping in, dodging out, and she was mercilessly beaten over the head by that wildly thrashing fish, dancing in, dancing out, throwing. Fern, snapped her mother. Stop it, she said. Stop inventing these stories. I'm not inventing, said Fern. I'm just telling you the facts. Well, what finally happened? Asked her mother, whose curiosity began to get the better of her. Charlotte's cousin won. She wrapped the fish up and then she ate him when she got good and ready. Spiders have to eat the same as the rest of us. Yes, I suppose they do, said Mrs. Arable vaguely. Charlotte has another cousin that's a balloonist. Remember, a spider that lets out a line and just flows off the web? She stands on her head and lets out a line and is carried aloft on the wind. Mother, wouldn't you simply love to do that? Well, yes, I would, come to think of it, said Mrs. Arable. But Fern, darling, I wish you would play outdoors today instead of going down to Uncle Homer's barn. Find some of your playmates and do something nice outdoors. You're spending too much time in that barn. It's not good for you to be alone so much, said her mother. Alone, said Fern. Alone? My best friends are in the barn cellar. It's a very sociable place. Not at all lonely. Can you tell by the word sociable what she means? It gives you some clues. If you don't know the meaning of sociable, look at the word behind it. Not at all lonely. Sociable. What's the root word of sociable? Social. You've heard that word a lot in the media right now on TV about us being home, social distancing. To distance is to stay away from. So social must mean to be around people. So Fern tells her mom it's not at all lonely. It's really a very sociable or people-friendly place. Fern disappeared after a while, walking down the road toward Zuckerman's. Her mother dusted the sitting room, and as she worked, she kept thinking about Fern. It did not seem natural for a little girl to be so interested in animals. Finally, Mrs. Arable made up her mind. She was going to pay a call on Dr. Dorian and take his advice. So she got into the car and drove to his office. This is Fern's doctor in the village. Dr. Dorian had a thick beard. He was glad to see Mrs. Arable. This is what he looked like. He was glad to see Mrs. Arable. Let's see. And he gave her a comfortable chair to sit in. It's about Fern, she explained. Fern spends entirely too much time in the Zuckerman's barn. It does not seem natural, she said. She sits on a milk stool in the corner of the barn cellar near the pig pen and watches animals hour after hour after hour. She just sits and listens, said her mom. Dr. Dorian leaned back and closed his eyes. How enchanting, he said. Is that a compliment? Yes, like how wonderful. It must be real nice and quiet down there, he said. Homer, which is Mr. Zuckerman, he has some sheep, hasn't he? Yes, said Mrs. Arable. But it all started with that pig that we let Fern raise on a bottle. She calls him Wilbur. Homer bought the pig, and ever since it left our place, Fern has been going over to her uncle's to be near it. I've been hearing things about that pig, said Dr. Dorian, opening his eyes. They say that he's quite a pig. Have you heard about the words that have appeared in the spider's web? Mrs. Arable asked nervously. Yes, said the doctor. Well, do you understand it? Asked Mrs. Arable. Understand what? He said. Do you understand how there can be any writing in a spider's web? Oh, no, said Dr. Dorian. I don't understand it. But for that matter, I don't understand how a spider learned to spin a web in the first place. When the words appeared, everyone said that they were a miracle, but nobody pointed out that the web itself is a miracle. What's miraculous about a spider's web? Said Mrs. Arable. I just don't see why the spider's web is a miracle. It's just a web. You ever try to spin one? Said Dr. Dorian. Mrs. Arable shifted uneasily on her chair. No, she replied, but I can crochet a doily. Okay, what does crochet mean? To make something out of yarn and a needle. And she said, I can knit a sock. Sure, said the doctor, but somebody taught you that, didn't they? My mother taught me, she said. Well, who taught a spider? A young spider knows how to spin a web without any instructions from anybody. Don't you regard that as a miracle? Could you say that that's one of the spider's adaptations, being able to spin a web? Yes, that's a behavior that helps an animal take care of itself. Well, don't you regard that as a miracle, said Dr. Dorian. Well, I suppose so, said Mrs. Arable. I never looked at it that way before. Still, I don't understand how those words got into the web. I don't understand it, and I don't like what I can't understand. Well, none of us do, Dr. Dorian said, sighing. I'm a doctor. Doctors are supposed to understand everything, but I don't understand everything, and I don't intend to let it worry me. Mrs. Arable fidgeted. Fern says that the animals talk to each other. Dr. Dorian, do you believe that animals can talk? I never heard one say anything, he replied, but that doesn't prove it in nothing. It's quite possible that an animal has spoken civilly to me and that I did not catch the remark because I was not paying attention, he said. Children pay attention better than grown-ups. If Fern says that animals in the barn can talk, I'm quite ready to believe her. Perhaps if people talked less, animals would talk more. People are incessant talkers. I can give you my word on that. Here's a new word that you may not have heard before. Incessant. What does the man mean by people are incessant talkers? Okay, let's look at the words around it. If people talked less, animals would talk more. People are incessant talkers. So incessant means you do it too much. Dr. Dorian says that people talk too much. Well, I feel better about Fern, said Mrs. Arable. You don't think that I need to worry about her? Does she look well? Asked the doctor. Oh, yes. Is her appetite good? Do you know what the word appetite means? Is she eating well? Oh, yes, she's always hungry. Sleep well at night? Oh, yes. Then don't worry, said the doctor. Well, do you ever think she'll start thinking about something besides pigs and sheep and geese and spiders? How old is Fern? She's 8, said her mother. Well, said Dr. Dorian, I think that she will always love animals. But I doubt that she spends her entire life in Homer Zuckerman's barn cellar. How about boys? Does she know any boys? Well, she knows Henry Fussy, said Mrs. Arable brightly. Dr. Dorian closed his eyes and he went into deep thought. Henry Fussy, he mumbled. Remarkable. Well, I don't think that you have anything to worry about. Let Fern associate with her friends in the barn if she wants to. I would say offhand that spiders and pigs are fully as interesting as Henry Fussy. Yet I predict that the day will come when even Henry will drop some chance remark that catches Fern's attention. It's amazing how children change from year to year. How is Avery? He asked, opening his eyes wide. Oh, Avery, chuckled Mrs. Arable. Avery is always fine. Of course, he does get into poison ivy. And he gets stung by wasps and bees, and he brings frogs and snakes home, and he breaks everything that he lays his hands on. He's fine. Well, good, said the doctor. Mrs. Arable said goodbye and thanked Dr. Dorian very much for his advice, and she felt greatly relieved. We'll pause here today on chapter 14 for the week. Again, make sure that you have taken the Google Form document that has chapters 10 through 12, okay? And next week, I believe we may just wrap up by the end of the week, very end of the week, our book study on Charlotte's Web. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope that you are reading ahead if you'd like to. It's always good for you to read. Are you reading a book on your own? Each person should be reading a book on their own during this time, okay? If you don't have one at home, you can always, there's some free ones you can download probably online. And you also make sure that you have done, today is Thursday, so by tomorrow, you need to have completed your 80 minutes of iReady Math, 80 minutes of iReady Reading, okay? And then also, if you have, after you get those two done, if you have time for the MobyMax websites, that's what you should be doing. I hope you've stayed caught up with your fact fluency, and you're going over, you're adding and subtracting and all the things that we've learned there. And that way you can stay up and stay ready. You got your last star today and something from the bag. Very good. All right, so I want you to join us tomorrow. Remember, we had to remove our time to 10 instead of 11. Scalar has a meeting at 11, so let's move our Zoom time tomorrow to 10, and let's see if we can have everybody on. Last week we only we're missing like 2 or 3. So you get on if you can tomorrow at 10 o'clock, okay? All right, well, enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget to be doing your PE, music, art, Spanish, and math activities for the other teachers, okay? And I will see you soon, and thank you for working hard, okay? Bye-bye.